Back in 2019, when I was in Phoenix filming with embalmer and friend of the channel, Monica Torres, we said this.
If you want to see us go through the process of embalming, how many likes do we need?
What did I say on the table? 100,000 likes. I think I said 100,000. Let's make it 150,000. 150,000. This is not the thing I want to do. I see all your comments. Caitlin, you said you were gonna get embalmed like 2 years ago. What gives? What happened? Oh, I don't know, Janice. Ever heard of a little something called the pandemic? Huh? But I am a woman of my word. You gave us those likes, and here I am, a vaxxed queen, ready to hold up my end of the bargain and get embalmed. Well, fake embalmed, not real embalmed. You can't embalm a living person on YouTube. Come on, that's only for my Patreon. Kidding, kidding. I got jokes. Hi, Monica.
Hi, Caitlin.
We're back, baby. How was your pandemic?
We survived.
Exactly. I am here today for Monica to embalm me. Now, everybody thinks that I hate embalming.
Well, some people.
Not true, internet. I think that embalming can serve a very useful purpose. Is it overused by the American funeral system? Yes. But there are certain situations. For example, a badly decomposed body, which we've talked about with you before on this channel. The body has to travel long distances, or it's a long period of time after the person died before they can have a viewing.
Such as what we experienced during the pandemic. It's an option.
It's an option, thank you.
So usually I don't get to interview my clients.
The corpses aren't speaking up, I hope not.
But in this instance, we're gonna interview Caitlin on the red sofa, and we're gonna find out just exactly how she died so that we can customize her embalming.
So let's say that I am a young person who has died of cancer. So I'm not autopsied, but my family would like to see me looking a little rejuvenated after a difficult path to my death. So what chemicals for the embalming would you recommend?
Why don't we start with cosmetizing from the inside out by using a dye.
Interesting. So this is a dye concentrate. So this goes in the embalming fluid?
It does, and it's formaldehyde free.
Does it depend on my complexion how much of this dye you put into the tank?
Absolutely, it depends on your complexion, it depends on your ethnicity, and a lot of other factors.
For embalming use only, keep away from children. I should say so.
So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna plump you back up with a product called Restorative.
So Restorative is a humectant. What does a humectant do in the embalming process?
It's going to restore a lot of the fluid that was lost during the dyeing process.
Okay, so it's a lotion for inside.
Exactly.
So this is arterial fluid. This is the stuff. This is what makes an embalming, would you say?
I would agree, absolutely. That's the bad mamma jamma.
So what does 28 index arterial mean?
What it really means is the strength of the fluid. When someone has passed due to cancer, a higher strength of fluid is definitely recommended and needed.
Which means more formaldehyde.
More formaldehyde.
Cranked up formaldehyde.
Yes.
You would pair this with the humectant and the dye.
Yes.
And those together would be what was in your tank.
Absolutely, along with some other co-inject chemicals. Co-inject chemicals are the vehicles that move the arterial and the humectant through the body.
Okay, so kind of the vehicles
they
all climb into and drive through your arteries.
That's right. To the slab we go.
Wah, wah. How long is this entire process gonna take, start to finish?
That's a really good question. I think that most people have that question. Every person's death is different, so every embalming is different. Some people can take maybe a half hour to an hour, and some people can take days. So right now what we're doing is we're bathing Caitlin's body and breaking up all the rigor mortis that may have set in after death.
Yeah, let me do my rigor mortis impression.
Yeah, do your rigor mortis, perfect. Many times when people die, they will come into the funeral home and they still are in a state of rigor mortis. Part of the embalming process is actually massaging the hands, the arms, the legs, and all the different parts of the body to break up the rigor mortis. And this is how I do it. Kind of like a massage.
For me, it's exactly like a massage. I'm not gonna lie, this is so relaxing and nice. I'm having a great time.
We've completed that disinfecting process, and now we're going to disinfect the body from the inside out, which is by internally embalming the body with formaldehyde.
Warning for those of you non-needle and scalpel fans, this may get a little scalpely. So at this point, we have to open my artery and open my vein to both drain the blood out of my body and open an artery to replace my blood with this tank of fluid behind me. Corpse explains embalming to you.
Right now, what I'm doing is I'm preparing my tools, my surgical scissors, and this right here is called a hemostat. And this is what I'm going to be clamping down her artery with. And I have a couple of aneurysm hooks that I will be lifting up the arteries with, and a drain tube. This is like a little pump that will drain the blood out of the vein. Firstly, what I will do is I will take my scalpel and create an incision right on her collarbone, about a 1-inch incision right here, so that I can have access to her carotid artery.
This is a much more confronting experience than
Isn't it
climbing in your
really?
own coffin. The scalpel to the carotid artery is like the most confronting death thing I've done. And I've put myself in a lot of death-confronting situations in my day.
You really have. So here we are. This is the arterial tube that we're going to insert into Caitlin's carotid artery. And once that's inserted into her artery, I'm going to clamp it off just like this with my hemostat, and that'll hold it in place through the embalming process. Now that we've prepared the chemicals and Caitlin is disinfected and bathed, I'm gonna go ahead, insert this arterial tube into her carotid artery. This machine is set up to push the preservative fluid through her arteries and out her veins. So as this arterial fluid is going into her arteries, in through her heart, all the way down to her arms, her legs, her fingers, and her toes, the blood that is in the body, bacteria-rich blood, is coming out. And that's where the real preservation happens.
The preservation happens because the embalming fluid that is now going into my arteries is fixing the proteins to
Correct.
make them so they don't decompose the way they normally would.
Exactly. Formaldehyde coagulates protein.
That's kind of mortuary school 101.
Yeah.
It's like embalming coagulates proteins.
Yes. In this case, where Caitlin has passed away from cancer, most likely, if there are no blockages in her arteries, the process should take anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. While the embalming fluid is moving through the body, the embalmer is actively massaging the body, the feet, the hands, the arms, the face, the shoulders, every part of the body that we can access. We're going to be stimulating those areas to push the blood out and encourage the preservative into the capillaries. And you can see right here that I'm pushing the blood towards the heart. So when we massage towards the heart. Say that, you know, her hand isn't getting embalmed and the rest of her arm is, that massage is really gonna help facilitate the movement of the blood and the fluid in there.
So far, I give 2 stars to the formaldehyde coursing through my body, 9.5 stars to the massage element. Extremely positive experience.
Have you seen my new trocar?
I have not seen your new trocar. I'm about to see it in the most intense way. Oh my god, it's golden! I've never seen a golden trocar in all my life. Oh wow, it's... Only you would have a personally embossed golden trocar. Perhaps the most misunderstood and potentially difficult part from the family to hear about embalming is what goes on here with the trocar and the cavity.
I agree. I don't know if it's necessarily that families have a difficult time understanding it, but funeral directors in general, I think, have a hard time talking about it with families. When I talk to families about cavity work, I most often reference plastic surgery and liposuction, because this is a technique that is very, very similar to liposuction. However, instead of liposuctioning fat, we're suctioning the actual visceral organs. For the sake of ease, we're going to insert the trocar into Caitlin's abdomen and point straight towards her right ear, puncturing the heart through the diaphragm, and begin to proceed with that process back and forth, creating channels through all of her organs. And you can see that I'm creating a fan motion. As I'm moving the trocar in and out of her body, there is a suction that's going on, and all of the fluid, bacteria-rich blood, any kind of ickies, as I like to call them, are being removed. Once I've done the upper half of her body and I feel like it's sufficiently been channeled, I will remove the trocar, come back through the same opening, head straight down towards her bladder, dip 2 inches down, and begin to suction any urine that's left over in her bladder after death. After I've relieved her bladder, I will go through and attack the intestines, puncturing them as much as I can to create channels for the embalming preservative to creep in and do its job.
I don't know that I've ever pictured myself being trocarred before.
Well, who has, right?
I certainly did right then.
I do think it is really important, like even though it is an invasive procedure, it is one of the most important things that we can do to preserve the body for long term.
The reason that I always argue that it's overused is because grandma who died yesterday and is having an immediate viewing maybe does not need the full cavity treatment.
Yeah.
And so to have every single body in the funeral home be embalmed in this, start to finish process is maybe excessive. But when you look at what this kind of work actually does, it does have such a specific function.
This is another really fabulous magical tool that I really love, and this is called an evolution injector. And this tool is spectacular because in the old days, they had gravity bongs that they would hold up and, they'd use gravity to inject the fluid. And now we have these amazing tools that our embalming chemical companies make for us. So what we do is we attach our cavity fluid right here, and it just twists right onto this device, and we turn it upside down. Once I've attached my cavity fluid onto my device, I'm gonna go straight through the channels, the same opening, and release the fluid into the organs, into the heart, into the lungs.
So embalmers in the crowd may wonder why we haven't talked about setting the features, which is closing my eyes and my mouth and giving me a less obviously dead appearance. But you don't do that at the beginning of the embalming process.
I think it's important to remember that embalming, besides being a science, is also an art. And so every artist creates art a little differently, and I don't set features in the beginning like most embalmers. I will, however, close the eyes, and oftentimes I will close the mouth. Now, there are several different ways to close the mouth. My preferred method is a muscular suture. Be dead. Which I will insert my needle through the nostril, across the septum, down the nostril, down underneath Caitlin's lip, across the bottom, back up the nostril, and I'll tie a nice little bow right here and insert it into her nostril to be hidden forever.
So you may not realize that many embalmed bodies have a little nose present.
Yes, there's a little bow in there on many of them. Secondly, I would say, most embalmers, many embalmers use eye caps. I prefer not to use eye caps. I think it looks more natural to offer a hypodermic injection with what we call feature builder. And it's just that, it's building the feature, and it'll also keep her eye closed, and it looks a little more natural than an eye cap.
Last, but certainly not least, your specialty is restorative work. And the face is sort of the reason the family is there.
Yeah.
So if I had some sunken features, what would you go about doing to, plump me and preen me?
A lot of times the embalming process, if it's gone without fault, it will restore the body very nicely, and there's very little that's needed to be done after as far as cosmetics. However, some people who have suffered from, like we talked about before, organ failure or severe trauma may need some restorative work. And that's where I use hypodermic injection techniques to really build the features to a rejuvenated appearance.
So we're gonna leave the safety on the needle first for you needle phobes, you're welcome. And then also so you can actually get in there more and show what you would be doing.
Absolutely, yes. So what I'll do is I'll typically go in right at the nose, and keep in mind this is
What's in here when you're doing this?
This is Feature Builder, yes.
So what is Feature Builder?
Feature Builder is a preservative product that we use that coagulates once it's delivered into the tissue itself. So it will plump the tissue.
So it's like Juvederm or like...
It's like Juvederm or Sculptra, any of those. Yes, okay. Absolutely.
All right, hit me. I'm ready for my, I'm
ready
ready to get
Botox?
Instagram face.
Okay. So what I do is I'll go straight in through the nose and right up the middle of her nose, come up through the glabella and create a fan-like technique. After that, I will come straight down right into the cheek on each side and plump her cheeks just a little bit. Less is more. Then I'll come down to the lips, insert my needle, very, very slowly and gently plump her lips, top and bottom. And who doesn't want a nice plump chin? Nowadays, it's getting really popular for plastic surgeons to create a nice jawline. So I've gone so far as to create a jawline for men and women. Obviously, women are a little softer and men are a little bit more square. Finally, I always think it's important to make sure to preserve and rejuvenate the ears. So I will always go right into the earlobe and up the ear and preserve this area. And that's always nice in case the family wants to add earrings later on. And at this point, you're embalmed, Caitlin. How do you feel?
That was interesting. I feel like this may be the final frontier of me sort of like climbing in an aquamation machine and lying there. I think this is sort of my final frontier of facing my own mortality.
Well, I'm glad that I could walk you to that line here in the Death Education Studio here at Cold Hand Toasts.
I wouldn't do it with anyone but you. I promise you. If you want me to come back to Monica's studio to talk about unembalmed bodies and how it's the future of the funeral industry and how if a family doesn't want embalming, there's still all sorts of things that you can do to prepare the body without chemicals, then we need how many likes?
I don't know, 174?
170. I like that kind of energy. 174,000 likes is the exact number we need for me to come back to Phoenix into the loving arms of Monica Torres.
Let's get her back, y'all.
Put my body in a train and bring me back to Phoenix.
Well, you're embalmed now, so we can ship you around the U.S. like President Lincoln.
All right, what are my hands doing for the casket?
Okay, so left hand placed gently over right. Your nails look great, by the way.
Thank you. All right, I'm ready for my close-up. Send in the family. This video was made with generous donations from death enthusiasts just like you. I'm going to a hotel where I filmed 3 videos. I'm here, look. We're high vibes, we're happy to be here. I think I can do it. Think about it. So for someone who's already as pale as a corpse in my real life, how much dye would you put in?
Well, I like to say I put a little splash in, but if we're gonna get technical, we'd put about half an ounce.
So I was just being de-stinkified.
You were being de-stinkified. Absolutely.
And in home funerals, they use a lot of essential, I feel like I'm just talking to the camera like normal, but you're on this embalming table. You don't have any needles by my eye right now, right?
No.
Okay. I was gonna open my, Wait a second, yes you do. Trying to trick me.
Yep.
All right, if you must, we can do some more massage for B-roll purposes. Monica.
We need to do that.
I'm a dead person. I need my full embalming experience. We talked today about, is this a terrible angle? Do I look, this is like the most unattractive angle.
It's like right in your chin.
Ever. What am I doing?
You're embalmed so well that you rival some of those mummies.
Yeah, exactly. I'm an American mummy. I'm an American mummy ready to go the distance. I've been flawlessly embalmed and I will be around 300 years from now.